Welcome to the Sports Perspective, your number one destination for untold stories about the sports world. All right, everybody, welcome back to the third episode of the Sports Perspective. I'm very personally excited for today's episode. I'm joined by the founder of the Bellingham Youth Basketball Association, but to me, more importantly, my grandfather, John Simpson. How are you doing today?
Very well, thank you.
All right. I think we'll get straight into it. So I wanna walk back to the very beginning for this one. Your time growing up in South Boston. How much did playing sports affect you when you were growing up in Southie, and what did you play?
That's the thing. I didn't really never played any organized sports. I was working when I was very young. It was just my mother and and I really had to work. So when I did play sports, it was mostly pickup games. I played a lot of basketball, and they right outside my window and all other projects in South Boston with a basketball club. I could climb out my window day and night and go shoot hoops. Uh, and then teams from the projects would have to go play other teams elsewhere. And I played a lot of that. Like I said, pickup games. But as far as organized sports went, I really didn't play much when I was young. I loved the game. Basketball always meant a lot to me. I always felt that was a new game.
How competitive was the pickup hoop league? Like, was this some serious stuff?
Oh, this was some serious stuff. It was kind of rough because the referees were probably like volunteer most of the time until they put a tournament together. Sometimes there would be tournaments between the projects, and then they'd hire referees. But for the most part, they were volunteer and they let more go than they should. Could be a little bruising, but it was good. It was something I needed because, like I said, I didn't get much chance to play organized sports. Even in high school, I worked most of my time after school.
That's awesome. And basketball does seem to be the game of the day, because another thing I wanted to ask you about was the Boston Celtics. Now, you were growing up like as the Boston Celtics really hit their stride as like the powerhouse of the NBA, especially back then. So, growing up, like, how did being a Celtics fan, how did you come into that? Did their winning affect your love of the Celtics, or even your love of basketball? And if you have any good stories about that era, feel free to share, because that's something that I know myself and a lot of my viewers might not know a lot about.
Well, I'm 81 years old, so I go back to just about the beginning of when their dynasty started. Uh, at that time, we were listening to them because like I said, I love the game. I love basketball as it is. And it wasn't a lot on TV, so we were listening on the radio. Maybe the first couple of years even, when Russell first came to the Celtics. And they won their first championship, obviously, when he came. He brought that winning attitude, and he was probably the greatest player of my lifetime. Yeah, but that's how I felt. But uh, it started then, and then probably in my senior year of high school, we got tickets to most of the games. They were very expensive. My best friend and I, Randy Madden, would go to the games often. We made all the playoff games that came to Boston. It was amazing. I think I seen them win 4 championships here in Boston. And it was just a great time to be watching basketball. And by the third or fourth year, because they were winning the way they were prime on TV. And you'd get to see more games on television than you ever did before. Uh, Going to the Garden was the only way really to watch. It was amazing. And to see Russell tip off at the beginning of those games was just something else. And we'd go to a game, especially the playoffs, and we'd come home, and a bunch of us would get together and we'd replay those games. out on a cement court with chain link baskets. It was just an amazing time in their sports near Boston. The Bruins were great to watch, but they were losing they would fill the Boston Garden for the Bruins games and the Celtics games. You could get a seat for any game. They never sold out until probably maybe the fourth championship. Always the playoffs they'd sell out, but not during the season. Not at all. Boston was a Bruins team, the Bruins town, and the Celtics kind of like second year. And yeah, they come a long way, obviously, today. Yeah, it was great. And then after that era and the championships, the 11 championships they had won, the third era came in a few years later. I went through that whole era, watching Larry Bird, Mikhail. It was just an incredible team to follow through my life. I still do today. As far as stories go, probably some stories I can't tell here.
What was the environment in the old Boston Garden like? Because the TD Garden's a great arena, but I know a lot of fans my age, we hear people that are older than us constantly raving about, the old Boston Garden, the experience going to a game. So what, in your opinion, made it so special?
Well, it made it special because you seemed so close to everything. You were right on top of it. It was just, we sat just about anywhere we wanted during the season. During the playoffs, you'd have a tough time getting a seat, but we always got them. And the old garden, you were watching the games, smoke-filled arena because everybody smoked at the beginning. It was quite a while before they started smoking at the garden. And it was rat infested, to say the least. The locker rooms for the visiting teams out was terrible. He would turn the heat off on their locker rooms, and the stories about Albert, what he did to the opposing team was incredible. He'd lock the door and tell them they couldn't find the key until just before the game started. He did some wild stuff. He really did. And, but the atmosphere was just so different. It's much cleaner, much nicer now, as far as comfort. But I take the old garden any day.
You talked about Bill Russell a little bit beforehand. I think a big thing that comes through like generations is like player association. Like you talk about Bill Russell a lot. When I talk to my dad about hoops, more often than not, it comes to Larry Bird. Being my age, one of the first players I always think of when, having discussions being from Boston is Jason Tatum. I'm sure there's an era of people where their mind immediately goes to Paul Pierce. What in your mind for like people my age, if you had to educate us on like the greatness of Russell, what made him like so great in your mind, especially comparatively to like the stars of the 90s or today?
Well, first of all, the 11 championships. No one will ever do that again. I mean, they say records are meant to be broken. No one will ever win the 11 championships again. I am sure of that. I mean, it's an opinion, but that's how I feel. And Russell changed the game. He was a defensive player. He could score, but he only scored when needed. He was such a defensive player that half the times that he blocked a shot, he kept the ball in play, and he'd block a team member. And people just never saw that. A year, maybe it was 2 years. He only won or two. Then Chamberlain came into the league. And in my opinion, Chamberlain was the greatest athlete that ever played the sport. I mean, he was just incredible. You got to realize he scored 100 points in a game. And Russell played him, and 9 out of 10 times he beat them. He just, he's an incredible defensive player who changed the game completely. Yeah. he had a great cast around him. He had players like Heitzer and Cousy, Sharman. Uh, one of my favorite players of all time is Zach Samuels, another great defensive player who could score more at will, but played more defense. He was always on the best player on the opposing team. And as far as Russell, I see guys get a breakaway in a game and get down and be looking behind them and blow the shot because they thought Russell was going to come back, follow them down the court and block them. We did that so often. We'd chase a guy on a breakaway and catch him and block the shot. It was just amazing. Amazing to see it in person games. And I know about Russell, probably my later years, I realized what a person he was. He was so involved in, just about everything. Great, I don't know, quite the guy
Oh, he's like,
than any other athlete.
yeah, his involvement in like the civil rights activities is stuff that is still like incredibly inspirational today.
He probably more than any other player of its time got involved in civil rights. And he never backed down, never ever backed down. And the stories about what happened to that team when they played down south, it's amazing. They weren't allowed in some of the restaurants, and I know the whole team walked out of just a coffee shop one time. Well, not that they weren't all there, but there were 7 or 8 of them that waited for a coffee and a sandwich or something that they used to serve them. And Cousy right away turned to them and said, "Let's get out of here." And they all walked out. Different times back then, really different times.
Yeah. Speaking of different times, throughout like the generations, the game has changed a lot. So I wanted to ask, like, in your opinion, what are the biggest things that have changed in basketball that you've seen throughout the years? And have those changes been for the better or for the worse?
Well, I think they've been for the better. They've got much better athletes today. They're faster, they're bigger, they're stronger. I, I always joke that take any of those teams back to Russell and his crew, they beat them, but I don't know. It's amazing the athletes today, the difference in them. But, they really are the biggest, stronger, faster. But they changed the game that way, too. I mean, you got guys out of the 6'6". Cousy was 6 feet if you look at him. I think he was 6'1". He was listed that, but I don't know if he was 6'1". But it just they're much better. It's a different game.
It's a very
I didn't follow them because it changed so much, but it was hard to stay away. It really is really tough.
it's a very interesting thing, comparing like generations right now. I think something huge happened just last week. We saw Bam Adebayo go for 83 points,
You for it.
second only to Chamberlain. So I wanted to ask you, when you initially heard of Chamberlain scoring that 100 points, if you remember like where you were, what you were doing, and like how you felt when you heard that this like monumental record had been set, or even if you like knew in the moment that that was going to last for who knows how long.
Well, I did. I felt that would be another impossible record to break. Like I said, I don't think there's been a better athlete than Rich Chamberlain in the game. I mean, not he played more than basketball. He was quite a ball player. He was an incredible athlete. And Russell and him, as competitive as they were, became very good friends. But well, that was good. That was nice. But I don't know. You know, I don't know. Change when it did happen. It happened because the athletes getting bigger, stronger, and faster. And
Absolutely. That's the thing a lot of people like my age talk about, especially, the big discourse with the 90s fans about how like a Jordan would fit in today's league with all just the guys that are so much more incredibly athletic. And so my question for you, as kind of a capstone for the Wilt Chamberlain 100-point game, is if you think there's anybody in today's game that you could see breaking that 100 points. I mean, it's all up in the air now after you see Bam score 83, but
Well, I'll tell you, that surprised me a lot. There've been 60-point games, maybe a couple of goals, but to see him just do 83, that surprised me an awful lot, because I never thought that even that was attainable. Um, when he did that, when Chamberlain did that, it, uh, it's in my head, and I'm not 100% sure, but I believe I was at the game, not at the Garden, when that happened, because I think he scored 100 points against New York. I'd have to look that up. But back then they played double headers. And sometimes we'd go to watch both of them. Sometimes we'd only go to the Celtics game. And I think the game that he scored 100 points might have been at the old Garden. And in the first game, then the Celtics played second.
wow.
I'd have to look that up. I probably should have done it before we started it, because I knew you'd talk about Russell with me.
Definitely food for thought. I do want to switch gears a little bit because what like the big premise of this show, the reason I wanted to do this, like all the interviews, is like the impact of sports. And so we talk a lot about how sports impact people, but in turn, I like talking about how people get to impact sports. And my first two guests were both two of my good friends around my age. So we definitely talked a lot about how, they were impacted by sports and how we're turning around both guys that are looking for careers in sports. But this is such like a different interview for this show so early on because you have already had such a great impact on sports. So I want to talk a little bit about the Bellingham Youth Basketball Association, which you helped start. My dad coached. I played in it. My sister played in it. All of my friends from town played in it. Walk me through those early days, starting the league. What led you and the group of people that started it to want to start basketball in Bellingham? And, what was that process like?
Coming here from the city, uh, my three boys, your dad and his two brothers, growing up, there was no basketball at the time here in the town. I guess a few years prior, they had some pretty good coaching going on, and so they did have some basketball at high school. And but in youth sports, when we got here, there was none. Yeah, I really wanted my boys to play in any sport. I pushed them in any sport they liked, but I would definitely start them with basketball because they thought that was your tight knit team sport that you learned a lot from. And so I got together with some people here in town, parents who felt the same way as I did. They wanted their kids to play basketball. And John Petrin, he was a president of youth basketball at the time, a very young guy, a very smart kid. He was ahead of his time. And without his help, it was at my dining room table where we all sat. Grandmother, me, uh, Larry Hardbrook, Dad Hine, the Braleys, and we just put it together in our heads what we were going to do. And we get started at Macy School, which was a grammar school on a very small gym. And we had 6 teams. And we put them together, all ages. It started at and the first year of the league, it was like 10 to like 8 to 12. And the 6 teams, we got coaches. I coached the team myself the first year. And we played in this very small gym for 3 years. But more people wanted to get involved and play. More parents came to us. And so we went to the high school and approached them to use the high school gym. It was kind of a tough go, a long story. We eventually got us in there, but we get in there, and we had that gym and the small gym. The high school had 2 gyms, and the smaller one we started people 8. We never went through. I don't think 8 years of age to 10 years of age. We got in the small gym. 10 to 14 were up in the big gym. And now we've expanded it to probably 12 teams in the big gym and 4 or 5 teams in the smaller gym, which was more instructional than it was anything. We just wanted the kids to get basics and have fun doing it. Up in the bigger gym with the older age kids who had already played some in the league, those were a little more competitive games. Myself and Pat Hines refs every Saturday, 8 games. 8 games. Pat Braley and I would show up, open up the gym. She kept the scorebook for those 8 games, and we had volunteer scorers. He had the live scoreboard. It was pretty impressive. And I think over the years, people said, gee, that was wonderful what you did. All you people did put that league. I got more out of that league than almost you did. Just recently, I had a friend of your father's who played high school with your father come up to me and say, I really appreciate all you did. And, we got so much out of that going into high school. And I said, well, you know what? I got a lot more out of it than you did because I enjoyed it so much. And I really did. And after your father was going into high school and played in high school, I stayed with that. I think it was 12 years, 12 to 13 years. We started it in the year 79, 80. And it was great.
How do you feel now when you see like where the league has gone with like so many teams per every age group, which is now turned into like, just 2 years of kids per group, the different colored jerseys, the sponsors that will sponsor a league from town. Do you feel any sort of sense like of attachment or accomplishment for where the league has gone?
I do in some way. But we had all that. We had jerseys for the team. We had sponsors. It was just on a smaller scale. Today, Metrowest basketball is what it's become. It's probably the biggest in the area, but might be the biggest in the state. Amount of players, and it's just come a long way. But as far as attachments in the league now, I'm not involved, but I follow it. And I just think that everyone that took it over from us improved it. And it just kept getting bigger and bigger and better and better. And it really turned into what it is today.
I actually wanted to ask about the Metro West a little bit. How did you go from, working on the in-town, the Bellingham basketball to then rotating to like a crosstown travel league?
Well, I got together with Midway and Milton first. They're around their leagues. And we put together, I guess you'd call them all-star teams, travel teams. I'm sorry, not all-star, travel teams. And that was separate from the league. While the league was going on, you still had these travel teams. And they'd play against Milton, Midway, Franklin, that I just kept calling multi pounds to try to get them together. And we wound up just before I gave it all up. We had tournaments at our gym all the time. I think there was 6 men involved. Then in the Metrowest League that played, uh, it came down. We got tournaments. Our kids did very well. I think we currently had some great athletes come out of there.
Definitely a competitive basketball town, that's for sure. And that must go back a long time.
They did it.
You know, Metro West League champion. Not to flex too much. Great coaching, great teammates. I did a little bit, but while we're here, might as well. Another thing I wanted to ask about, switching gears a little bit, is the New York Giants. So football in New England, I know a little bit about this because of like the TV blackout rules where the Patriots would not broadcast their game locally if it wasn't sold out. They would never like be on the TV. So to my knowledge, while this was happening, you were a Giants fan. So talk to me about like how that felt having a team in New England, but like not really being able to watch them because they limited themselves.
Uh, I was a big time Giants fan because I watched, I want to say, Y.A. Tittle, Shelly Conley, a few other players, the Giants, Frank Gifford. That was the Giants were a winning team and just a fun team to watch. They had some incredible ball players. And yeah, you're right. You Patriots back then, when they started out, they were playing. It was an armory. I mean, they really started out in a different league, and you weren't. I don't know. The interest wasn't there. It took quite a while, I think, but because even before they were in play, the Giants were there. And that's what we watched. That's what older people in my generation would put a football game on and be watching the Giants. And that's probably my second favorite sport. So I watched a lot of football back then, and it was always a Giant. They were always on television. You know,
When did you jump ship from being a Giants fan to being a Patriots fan?
it took me a while. They began playing uh, a little more on television. A little more people were getting involved watching them. And I think probably when Steve Grogan became quarterback, and people they were winning games. Yeah, really, they really picked it up. I think with Grogan. Not that they weren't good before that with the play. They had some great players too. Their quarterback, they grown, but again, the interest wasn't there. You didn't see them on TV. So when Grogan played, they began, I think, a bigger Boston crowd following. And Grogan was quite the player. They moved them a lot. Yeah, from then on, I kind of stayed with them. Father, I had half a season ticket for about maybe 6 years, and I would take my father-in-law, Johnny, my oldest son, your father, Michael, and then Stephen. And your father, I'd take him to a game. You might sit with me a snow game, a rain game, and watch the game. Johnny, not so much interest. My father-in-law enjoyed it, and Stephen had no interest at all, but they went. Your father really was into sports, and more so than the other two. Johnny played a lot of sports. Your father was much more into the other two. I think that connection with him and I lasted a long time. The last one that kicked out, I was kicked out of the. But we watched a lot of games together, and so
How happy were you with his decisions to play like Pop Warner football or basketball as opposed to, I don't know, like a soccer or some other sports?
I got in trouble a few times mentioning the opinion of soccer. And so I was kind of glad they didn't. Soccer wasn't as big then. Soccer's so huge now and so good for kids. Like he he get on a football. His mother didn't think too much of it, but we went to all the games, and mother and I both. You never missed anything. And football, we used to say the ambulance was there for Michael because he got hurt more times in football game. And I don't know if you want to hear a story about him playing.
I mean, while we're here, we might as well.
He broke his hand, he had a cast on his hand, and we went to play Mansfield. And Mansfield come out onto the field. It looked like the Patriots or a college team coming out, and they were Pop Warner. Excuse me. And Michael was in hand on offense, not excuse me, on defense. And opposite him, the player opposite him. Well, first of all, he got warned, but where he could play with the cast, but he got warned definitely not to use it. Any shape or form. So the guy that he was up against, every time they had a play, he would grab Michael and throw Michael to the ground. And it happened like 3 or 4 times. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting with friends of mine, another firefighter and his wife who had a kid on Mansfield. So that we met them down there. And all of a sudden, their father gets up, this kid kind of looks up and brings that cast around and knocks him out and rear ends with the cast and gets thrown out of the game. He was competitive, very, very competitive. And I know too, he passed that on to you.
Yeah, it ran in the family, just a little bit, nothing too crazy.
A little bit.
Now, there's one more thing I wanted to ask you that I couldn't miss the opportunity to talk about this live. It's a very, long story tradition, especially in the Simpson households. I wanted to ask you about the great game of pool basketball.
Oh, well, it's a good thing we had the Milford Hospital close by. Going up behind us, our 3 boys played a lot of pool basketball, myself included, with 6 boys who lived behind us, the Sherlocks. And competitive was a mild word to put in those games. It was truly competitive. There were broken bones and there were black eyes, and pool basketball was just no pool basketball. And then when you became of age, we would play with you, and when you were really young, I would never let you win. And then you got to a point where you would never let me win. But we got a lot of fun in those years with them growing up. And everybody said to me, I grew up a block away from the ocean in South Boston. And I love the ocean. I love swimming. When I moved here, we usually have furniture in the living room, the dining room, and I got a pool installed. Your great-grandmother thought I was crazy. Maybe.
Great.
Great for you guys, for your father and his brothers growing up and keeping all his friends close. It was great time. Great time. Telling it was a great place to bring. I thought
Definitely
you guys as well.
definitely a great long-term investment, the pool. I have so many great memories in there too, shooting in the tire. It's always, so fun to think about too. Pool basketball in the backyard, you, my dad, my uncles. In high school, we started like a pool basketball league. It was just me and like 20 of my friends split into like teams of three, and we'd play like every Monday, and it was still
Yeah, I remember
just as
that.
brutal. My guest on the last episode, my good buddy Brandon, I have a great picture of him. He got like elbowed in the face. I'm shocked he didn't break his nose, just blood streaming down all over. It was yeah, the tradition of the game definitely carried on.
Yeah, that's what it was. No,
Well, I think that's all I had. Thank you very much for joining me today.
oh, thank you. This part, I know you're into athletes and like to interview athletes, and I never considered myself an athlete, but I love the game. I've been playing any kind of sport when I could. Like I said, I just didn't grow up playing organized sports, and I'm glad my voice dipped, and glad you did.
Yeah, the this show, you talk about not being an athlete. And like what I really want to do with this show is almost not focus less on athletes, because athletes are obviously important to sports, but almost like broaden the sphere. You know what I mean? Um, I've had great conversations about being a fan of sports, going into work for sports, sports in college, sports in high school, now starting basketball leagues on this show. So I think this episode, I think, was so important for me. I wanted this to be in the episode plan really bad because it provides like such a different perspective to complete, the arc of the show that I don't think I could have gotten with anybody else I know.
Uh, Thank you.
Of course, thank you very much for joining me. And for all the listeners at home, thank you for joining us for this episode, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you for watching this episode of The Sports Perspective. Make sure to look out for the rest of our content and leave a comment down below.